It is happening, right now. We are living through a moment that will be etched into history books. Call it what it is, Black Monday. The financial world is in a complete and utter freefall. The Mexican peso has not just fallen, it has collapsed, plunging over 20% in a matter of hours. Wall Street is a sea of red, a bloodbath of panicked selling as the Dow Jones Industrial Average craters, shedding thousands of points in a catastrophic opening bell. And the reason for all of this? Donald Trump has finally pulled the trigger. Just this morning, from the Oval Office, he activated a brutal new wave of economic sanctions, a declaration of war not just on Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, but on the entire European Union. But this is where the story takes a turn that no one in the West saw coming. They expected Mexico to plead. They expected the European Union to protest. They did not expect immediate, overwhelming, and devastating retaliation. Just minutes, not hours, but mere minutes after Trump's announcement, President Sheinbaum appeared on national television in Mexico and launched her own $50 billion retaliation attack, imposing crushing tariffs on critical United States goods, targeting steel and, most painfully, American corn. The world is holding its breath. This is not a trade dispute. This is economic warfare, and the first shots have just been fired live for all of us to see. In this video, you will learn why this Black Monday was not an accident, but a carefully planned demolition of the old world order. We will break down the specifics of Trump's multi-front attack and expose the real reasons he is targeting both Mexico and Europe simultaneously. Then, we will dive deep into Sheinbaum's shocking and immediate counteroffensive, revealing how her $50 billion retaliation package was designed to inflict maximum political pain on Trump where he lives and breathes, in the American heartland. Most importantly, we will connect the dots and show you that these are not two separate events. This is a coordinated, intentional strategy, a global power play that has been months in the making. Watch until the end, because the final part of this video will reveal the secret meeting that took place just last week in Shanghai, a meeting the Western media is completely ignoring, which laid the exact groundwork for this coordinated global response against the United States dollar. Welcome to our channel, where we explore the truth behind the headlines that the mainstream media is too afraid to touch. If you want to get ahead of the narrative and understand the monumental shifts happening to our world in real time, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on all notifications. You will not want to miss what is coming next. To understand the sheer magnitude of today, November 17th, 2025, we have to rewind the clock just a little. This fire has been smoldering for months, and Donald Trump just threw a barrel of gasoline on it. Since his inauguration earlier this year, his America First 2.0 agenda has been far more aggressive than his first term. The rhetoric has been clear. The era of globalism is over, and any nation perceived as taking advantage of the United States will face economic consequences. At the top of his list have been two primary targets. First, the European Union. Trump has long viewed the EU not as an ally but as a cunning economic competitor hiding behind the United States military umbrella. He has raged about Germany's auto exports, France's digital taxes on American tech giants, and the bloc's failure to meet its defense spending commitments. He sees them as freeloaders who have built their social welfare states on the back of American security guarantees. The warnings were there for anyone willing to listen. He told them to pay up, he told them to open their markets, and they offered little more than diplomatic platitudes. They thought he was bluffing. Second, and even more central to his agenda, has been Mexico under its new president, Claudia Sheinbaum. The relationship soured almost immediately after she took office. Sheinbaum, a scientist by training and a protege of the previous populist president, has projected a far more nationalistic and assertive image. She has refused to be a simple extension of Washington's border policy and has actively courted investment from a source that drives the White House mad: China. For the last year, we have seen a flood of Chinese manufacturing capital pour into northern Mexico. Companies facing American tariffs have simply relocated just south of the border, building massive factories in cities like Monterrey and Tijuana. They assemble their goods there, stamp Made in Mexico on the box, and ship them into the United States under the existing free trade agreements. Trump and his advisors have been screaming about this, calling Mexico a Chinese Trojan horse and a backdoor for the Chinese Communist Party to gut American industry. They demanded Sheinbaum shut it down. She refused, arguing that Mexico is a sovereign nation free to accept investment from whomever it chooses. This set the stage for today's cataclysm. The United States political establishment saw this as an existential threat. They could not allow a major economic rival to set up shop right on their doorstep, effectively neutralizing their entire tariff strategy against China. They believed they held all the cards. They believed that Mexico, with its economy so deeply intertwined with the United States, would have no choice but to fold. They believed that the power of the dollar and the threat of sanctions would bring Sheinbaum and the Europeans to their knees. They were wrong. They were catastrophically, monumentally wrong. Let's dissect Trump's attack first, because the sheer audacity of it is breathtaking. This was not a warning shot. This was a sledgehammer aimed at the foundations of the global trading system. The executive order he signed this morning is being called the Fair and Reciprocal Trade Enforcement Act of 2025, a pleasant name for an absolutely brutal piece of economic warfare. For Mexico, it imposes an immediate, across-the-board 60% tariff on every single product entering the United States. 60%. This is not a negotiating tactic. It is an economic embargo. Cars, electronics, medical equipment, agricultural products, everything. The official justification, as stated by the White House press secretary just an hour ago, is to combat the national security threat posed by the People's Republic of China's infiltration of the North American supply chain via the United Mexican States. They are framing this as a strike against China, using Mexico as the battlefield. The effect was instantaneous. The moment the news hit the Bloomberg terminals, the Mexican peso went into cardiac arrest. It dropped 22% against the United States dollar in less than 45 minutes. The Mexican stock exchange, the Bolsa, was forced to halt trading after it crashed by 15% at the opening bell. Billions of dollars in value vaporized. American companies that rely on Mexican factories, Ford, General Motors, Dell, 1,000 others, saw their stock prices plummet. Their entire business model, built on decades of integrated North American trade, was just declared illegal overnight. On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, traders were screaming, staring at their screens in disbelief. This move effectively severs the two economies. It is a declaration that the era of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement and North American free trade as we know it is over. But Trump did not stop there. In the very same executive order, he launched a second front against the European Union. This was the part that stunned the so-called experts. He imposed a 25% tariff on a highly targeted list of European goods. German luxury automobiles from Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Audi are on the list, a direct shot at the heart of the German economy. French wines, cheeses, and luxury goods are on the list, a punitive strike against President Macron, who has been the most vocal European leader calling for strategic autonomy from the United States. He also targeted key technological components and aerospace parts, a move designed to disrupt Europe's high-tech industries. The rationale provided was, again, couched in the language of fairness. Trump himself tweeted just minutes after the signing, in all caps, "For decades, Europe has laughed at us. They sell their cars here with almost no tax while they tax ours into oblivion. They rely on our military to protect them while paying nothing. The free ride is over. Pay up." The reaction in Brussels and Berlin was one of utter shock and outrage. They were expecting tense negotiations, not a sudden, unilateral economic assault. The move against Mexico was shocking enough, but to be targeted in the same breath, to be treated not as an ally but as an adversary on par with a nation they accuse of colluding with China, was a profound insult. They thought their special relationship with Washington gave them immunity. Today, they learned that in the world of America First 2.0, there are no special relationships. There are only American interests. The entire Western alliance, the bedrock of global politics for 75 years, is now cracking under the strain. Washington has made it clear, you are either with us, completely and totally on our terms, or you are against us, and if you are against us, you will be punished. This is the point in the old story where the targets of American power would typically issue a strongly worded condemnation, call for emergency meetings, and begin the long, slow process of appealing to the World Trade Organization. This is the script the world has followed for decades. But today, President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico took that script, tore it into a million pieces, and set it on fire for the entire world to see. What happened next will be studied by historians and economists for a century. It was a response so swift, so powerful, and so strategically brilliant that it caught Washington completely, utterly flat-footed. Literally 9 minutes after the White House press conference concluded, every television station in Mexico cut to a live broadcast from the National Palace in Mexico City. President Sheinbaum stood at a podium, flanked by her finance minister and trade minister. There was no panic in her eyes. There was cold, hard resolve. She announced what she called the Sovereignty and Dignity Defense Initiative. And she put a price tag on it: $50 billion. This was not a stimulus package. This was a war chest. She announced that, effective immediately, Mexico was imposing its own set of retaliatory tariffs on the United States, and her targets were not random. They were chosen with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, designed to inflict maximum political damage on Donald Trump and his base. First, a massive tariff on all United States steel imports. This targets the industrial heartland of America, the very Rust Belt states that Trump relies on for his political power. It sends a message directly to the steelworkers of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan. Your president's trade war is now going to cost you your jobs. But the masterstroke, the move that showed this was a new ballgame, was the second target: American corn. Mexico is the single largest export market for United States corn. Millions of tons of yellow corn flow south across the border every year, a foundational pillar of the agricultural economy of states like Iowa, Nebraska, and Illinois. This is Trump country. Sheinbaum hit them with a tariff so high it effectively closes the border to American corn overnight. She announced that Mexico had already secured agreements with Brazil and Argentina to replace every single bushel of corn they used to buy from the United States. The contracts were already signed. The ships were already being rerouted. Think about the message this sends. It tells the American farmer, the bedrock of Trump's political base, that their loyalty to him will now lead to their financial ruin. It is a direct assault on the political coalition that keeps him in power. Sheinbaum wasn't just playing defense. She wasn't just responding to an economic attack. She was launching a political counterinsurgency deep inside United States territory. In her speech, which was delivered in a calm but defiant tone, she stated, "For too long, the world has operated under the assumption that one nation can dictate the terms of existence for all others. Today, that assumption dies. Mexico is a proud, sovereign nation. We will not be bullied. We will not have our economic future held hostage." Mr. Trump's actions today are an illegal and immoral assault not just on Mexico, but on the principles of free commerce and mutual respect. He wanted a fight, and to be clear, we did not seek this fight. But we are ready for it. For every dollar of illegal tariffs he imposes on our people, we will respond with $2 of pressure on the sectors most critical to his own political survival. We will not back down. We will not waver. Viva Mexico! The sheer speed of this response is the tell. A $50 billion retaliatory package, complete with new commodity contracts with South American nations, cannot be drafted in 9 minutes. It cannot be arranged in a day or even a week. This was a pre-planned, war-gamed, fully loaded response, locked and ready to fire the second Trump made his move. Mexico knew this was coming. They were prepared for it, and they were not acting alone. Now we arrive at the most crucial part of this entire story. This is the piece you will not hear on CNN or Fox News. They will portray this as a simple, reactive trade spat, a classic tit for tat. They are either blind or they are willfully misleading you. What you are witnessing is not a series of isolated incidents. It is the public unveiling of a coordinated global strategy to systematically dismantle the American-led financial order. The retaliation from Mexico was step one. The immediate chaos on Wall Street and the panic in European capitals is the intended consequence. The key to understanding this lies in connecting the actions of today with the movements that have been happening in the shadows for the past year. Think about it. How could Mexico, a nation whose economy is supposedly dependent on the United States, mount such a confident and devastating counterattack? The answer is that they have secured a new backer, a new alliance. Sources deep within the diplomatic community have confirmed to us what we have long suspected. Last Tuesday, a high-level delegation from Mexico, led by Sheinbaum's top economic advisor, did not fly to Washington for talks. They flew east. They landed in Shanghai for a 3-day Economic Cooperation and Strategy Summit. Who was at that summit? Their counterparts from Brazil, the other economic giant of Latin America. And who was hosting them? The People's Bank of China. The agenda was explicit. The official topic was enhancing South-South trade. The real topic, according to our sources, was a detailed contingency plan for exactly what happened today. They called it the Economic Mutual Defense Protocol. The plan had 3 phases. Phase 1. War game the most likely American sanction scenarios and prepare immediate, painful, and politically targeted retaliatory measures. This is exactly what Sheinbaum executed today. The corn and steel tariffs were not her idea. They were part of a playbook written in that room in Shanghai. Phase 2. Financial stabilization. China and the other BRICS nations pledged to create a multi-billion-dollar currency stabilization fund for any member nation targeted by what they call American economic coercion. When the peso collapsed this morning, who do you think was on the other end of the line with the Bank of Mexico? It was not the Federal Reserve. It was the People's Bank of China, activating currency swap lines to prop up the peso and prevent a total meltdown. They are using their massive foreign currency reserves to act as a lender of last resort, a role traditionally played by the United States and the International Monetary Fund. They are creating a parallel financial system, a safety net for countries who choose to defy Washington. Phase 3. The long game. De-dollarization. The ultimate goal of this new alliance is to break the United States dollar's stranglehold on the global economy. At that meeting, they finalized plans to conduct all future trade between China, Mexico, and Brazil using their own currencies, completely bypassing the dollar and the SWIFT payment system. Sheinbaum's move to buy corn from Brazil and Argentina will be settled in Chinese yuan, not American dollars. Every transaction like this weakens the dollar's global dominance. It reduces demand for the dollar, which in turn reduces America's ability to fund its massive deficits and project power abroad. This is the big picture. Trump thought he was punching a single opponent, Mexico. But he walked right into a carefully laid trap, a coordinated counterpunch from a new bloc of nations that are tired of playing by America's rules. The attack on the European Union was a strategic bonus for them. It drives a wedge deep into the heart of the Western alliance, leaving the United States more isolated than it has been in a century. Trump, in his quest to make America strong, may have just provided the perfect catalyst for his rivals to unite and build a new world order that has no place for America at its head. The shockwaves from today's events are already spreading across the globe, creating a tsunami of economic and political instability. The ripple effect is touching every continent. First, look at the global supply chains. They are in absolute chaos. The North American auto industry, a marvel of cross-border integration, has effectively ceased to exist as it was this morning. Assembly lines in Michigan will grind to a halt within days, waiting for parts that are now stuck in Mexico behind a 60% tariff wall. The same is true for electronics, for medical devices, for aerospace. Corporations that spent decades building these efficient systems are now facing an existential crisis. Do they absorb the cost and go bankrupt? Do they pass it on to consumers, triggering massive inflation? Or do they abandon North America altogether? It's a nightmare scenario with no easy answers. The commodity markets are flashing red across the board. The price of corn has skyrocketed on the Chicago Board of Trade, not just because the Mexican market is now closed, but because traders are now pricing in the risk of further food weaponization in this new economic war. Steel prices are whipsawing, and most dangerously, the price of oil is surging. Geopolitical risk is back in a big way. The Middle East, Russia, and other petrostates see the United States, the world's traditional guarantor of stability, actively destabilizing the global economy. This creates uncertainty, and in the oil markets, uncertainty always means higher prices. This will act as a tax on every person on the planet. And this brings us to the United States dollar itself. For 80 years, the dollar has been the world's ultimate safe haven. In times of crisis, everyone rushed to the dollar. But what happens when the crisis is being caused by the United States itself? What happens when the American government is seen as a rogue actor, a source of instability rather than a source of strength? For the first time, serious questions are being asked. Central banks around the world are watching this and accelerating their plans to diversify their reserves away from the dollar. They see what happened to Russia's frozen assets. They see the sanctions on Mexico. They realize that holding dollars is no longer a risk-free proposition. It is a liability. It is giving Washington a weapon that can be turned against them at any moment. The move towards gold, towards the yuan, towards a basket of currencies is now in overdrive. And what about the other nations caught in the crossfire? Canada is in an impossible position, wedged between its two largest trading partners who are now at war. Japan and South Korea, key American allies with deep economic ties to China, are terrified. They are being forced to choose a side, a choice they have desperately tried to avoid. The world is being cleaved in two. The era of comfortable neutrality is over. So how is the world reacting? And what does this mean for the future? The responses pouring in from world capitals tell the whole story. The European Union, as expected, is fractured and paralyzed. They issued a joint statement from Brussels condemning Trump's deplorable and unilateral actions and promising a firm and united response. But behind the scenes, they are anything but united. Germany, whose entire economic model is based on exporting high-end cars, is in a state of sheer panic. The German chancellor has been on the phone with Washington, reportedly begging for an exemption. Meanwhile, France is taking a harder line, with President Macron calling for an emergency summit to fast-track European strategic autonomy and immediately draft a retaliation list. They are arguing amongst themselves, unable to form a coherent strategy. This weakness, this disunity, is exactly what their rivals were counting on. The Western alliance is proving to be a paper tiger. Then there is China. Their official response has been a masterpiece of strategic patience. A foreign ministry spokesperson held a press conference and calmly stated, "China opposes all forms of unilateralism and protectionism. We call for disputes to be resolved through dialogue and consultation under the framework of the World Trade Organization. We believe that economic warfare helps no one." It is a calm, measured statement that positions them as the responsible adult in the room. But behind this mask of neutrality, they are making their move. They are the ones providing the financial backstop to Mexico. They are the ones who will benefit from the EU-US split. They did not fire a single shot, but they are emerging as the biggest winner of this conflict. Russia is, of course, overjoyed. Russian state television is broadcasting the news with unconcealed glee, framing it as the inevitable collapse of the arrogant American empire. They see this as total vindication of their worldview. A Kremlin spokesperson said, We have long warned our partners that relying on the dollar-based system is unreliable and dangerous. We are seeing the consequences of that today. We are ready to work with all nations who seek to build a more just and multipolar world order. They will use this chaos to further their own interests, offering energy and security deals to countries feeling abandoned by the West. The New World Order is not coming. It is here. It arrived today, on Black Monday. We are no longer in a unipolar world dominated by the United States. We are in, at best, a bipolar world, with a US-led bloc and a China-led bloc. But more likely, we are entering a chaotic, multipolar world with several competing centers of power: the United States, China, Russia, India, a potentially independent Europe, a newly assertive Latin America. The old rules are gone. The institutions that governed the world for the last half-century, the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, have been exposed as powerless. We are entering an era of raw power politics, where economic interdependence is no longer a source of peace, but a weapon of war. Supply chains, currencies, and access to technology are the new battlefields. This is a far more dangerous and unpredictable world than the one we woke up in yesterday. So, as we try to make sense of the financial carnage and political wreckage of this historic day, let's pull back and summarize the 3 critical lessons from what we have witnessed. First, the era of unchallenged American economic dominance is definitively over. Unilateral sanctions from Washington will no longer be met with submission. They will be met with immediate, coordinated, and painful retaliation from a growing bloc of nations that are actively working together to counter American power. Second, the global financial system is fracturing before our very eyes. We are witnessing the birth of a parallel, non-dollar system led by China and the BRICS nations. This is the single biggest threat to American power, as the dollar's global dominance is what allows the United States to fund its military and exert its influence. Today's events have put that entire system on life support. And third, this is not just about tariffs or trade. This is a full-blown economic world war for the future of the 21st century. What is at stake is the very nature of global power, the rules of international relations, and the system that will govern the lives of billions of people. As we stand on this precipice, watching the old world burn down, the real question we have to ask ourselves is this: did Donald Trump just make a bold, necessary move to protect American workers and sovereignty, or did he fatally overestimate his power and trigger a chain reaction that will ultimately lead to the downfall of the very American-led system he claims to be protecting? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Which nations will be the ultimate winners and losers in this new world order? If you found this analysis insightful and want to stay ahead of the curve, please like this video, share it with anyone who needs to understand what is truly happening, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss our next update. The world is changing faster than ever. Do not get left behind.